Hello and welcome to Love from the Other Side. On this channel, we narrate near-death experiences from people around the world. We are going to start out today with an experience from Nanci, who had a meeting with a council of light beings during her near-death experience. But stay tuned because that will be followed up with a second near-death experience. Let's go ahead and get started. And if you like this type of content, I'd love to invite you to be the newest subscriber to Love from the Other Side. I had been in the emergency room with a splitting headache that had resisted my efforts at treatment. I do not have migraine headaches, but that is what I was treated for and released. Later in the evening, I experienced many seizures or whole body tremors with nausea, chills, and a general feeling of being sick for hours. I had no idea what caused these symptoms, but I was bedridden with them. I could barely stand up because I was so weak. My efforts to stop the tremors were useless. I kept trying to sleep it off, but turning from side to side in bed made me more nauseous. At some point, I left my body and went into the afterlife. I went into a meeting with a group of light beings who were on the Council of Light Beings monitoring the mission I had accepted at the end of my full-length near-death experience in 1994. The luminous beings were hastily sitting down around a typical rectangular wood conference table, which I knew to be a manifestation for my benefit. The room itself was only partially visually detailed. As I waited at the end of one side of the conference table, I saw my parents come in. For just a second or two, they donned the human appearance of my mother and father to greet me, and then they resumed their luminous light being appearance. They had both died years before, so I was thrilled to see them again. Then I had the thought that if I had known that they were so important enough to be on a council while they were alive, I would have treated them with more respect. The last to arrive was in full human form and dress. I was surprised that a human could attend a spiritual meeting like that. He sat with one haunch up on the end of the table and looked me right in the eyes and mouthed the words, "Surprise." And I was surprised. I recognized him from my current life. He was Jeff. Though after I returned to my body, I could not remember which Jeff, as I knew several. My thought was, holy cow, I must really be in trouble if they called in the field agents. The council told me that Nanci was dying. I had a choice to make. I could come home and stay, and I would not be considered in breach of the contract for failing to perform my mission. Or I could return to Nanci. They warned me that if I returned to Nanci's body, she and I would suffer for the rest of her natural life. They did not specify the suffering, but I understood it would be some sort of illness. I felt terrible that I had not fulfilled my mission. It was a matter of honor to me to keep my word and not be a quitter. So I chose to return to Nanci's body, and we did suffer together for decades afterwards. Once I returned to the body, I felt the need to get out of bed. I walked through the dining room to the kitchen, but had projectile vomiting in the dining room that spread out over several feet. I knew this was a bad sign of serious illness, and I decided I needed to go back to the emergency room. Before I called 911, however, I got a mop and mopped up the vomit so that the acid in it would not eat through the finish on the wood floor. I got dressed and called 911. By the time I got to the ER, I could feel that I was pulling out of the body again. I could barely make Nanci's mouth move in order to tell the doctor my symptoms. I told him about the sensation as well as earlier in my visit. He ordered blood tests and an MRI. When I was rolled on a gurney to the MRI room, I had to wait outside the room for another patient's test to finish. Nanci's body was lying flat on the gurney, but I sat up out of the body while remaining inside the hips and legs. I looked around the hallway on both sides, and I noticed a doctor running. I could see him through the walls of the hallway, as though they were not even there. He ran up to me with an infusion bag and an IV kit and started the IV. He told me that my blood sodium level was so low that I could die. I thought, yeah, I've been there and I've done that. I was then admitted to the hospital for 2 days to bring my blood sodium level up to normal. I became aware that those souls who have a mission to fulfill are monitored by a council of light beings so that they don't wander too far off track. Other souls that do not have a mission are not monitored. A soul can tell whether it does or does not have a mission if during an NDE it comes before some group of beings and the soul feels like the group is passing judgment. I knew that my purpose was to tell anyone who would listen what I had experienced and learned. That is it for Nanci's NDE, and now we are going to move on to a second experience brought to us by Sharon. I cannot recall getting sick with pneumonia, the 911 response emergency room visit, 7 days in the medical intensive care unit at a major university, nor 9 days of that time not being in the physical world. The journey seemed to last for days, but perhaps it was only minutes or hours. I found myself going through a tunnel, almost floating or swimming through this tunnel. I found myself in a dark space, yet there were bright primary colors seeming to form letters that I cannot recall. This space felt hard, like work. I felt tired. It seemed chaotic and loud. The space was unpleasant, and I remember disliking it. I then slipped through what seemed like the same tunnel, and I arrived in a tunnel-like space with a soft white or somewhat golden or shimmering light. As I was moved towards the light, I was not aware of my physical body. I recall feeling tremendous feeling of peace, calm, quiet, beauty, and simply letting go of tension, for lack of better words. I remember thinking that I preferred this space over the chaotic space. I was happy. I was moving without any effort on my part toward the soft glow. I continued feeling the most incredible peace, accompanied by a gentleness and a softness. I recall feeling eager to reach the light. Yet I did not feel rushed. I was getting closer. I then noticed a very soft yet worn-looking flow and the fold of light blue and gold robe. I could only see the legs of the person wearing the robe. I knew he was God. I wanted to see his face as I moved closer, but I did not. During my travel toward the light, I recall hearing gently, softly spoken words. I somehow knew that I needed to remember the words. I recall feeling slight frustration that I was having difficulty remembering those words, but after a while, I had memorized them and recall feeling relieved. The words I was told to memorize were, "Seek not to understand so that you may believe, but seek to believe so that you may understand." I then felt myself being pulled backward and far from the light. I did not want to go, and I recall feeling sad. I tried to fight being pulled back, yet I continued moving backward. Somehow I found myself turned away from the light, and I knew that I had to quickly take one last look back at it. It felt so important, and I knew there was not much time. I quickly turned my head over my shoulder, and I saw the soft glow and the flowing robe one last time. And there, walking into the light, was my beloved soulmate, my precious little teacup poodle, Coco. He had passed about a year before this experience, and I have missed him terribly. I only saw his back end as he entered the soft light. I remember smiling to myself, feeling tremendous relief that I saw him and he was okay. I was and am still happy that I remembered the words, yet I am confused. I did some research later and learned that these words were from a poet named Pablo. I had never heard these words, nor did I know anything about Pablo. I have gone over and over it in my mind trying to remember hearing these words prior to this experience, but I believed they were new to me. Yet, as I think about it now, I was learning about so many different faiths before this, trying to understand and trying to believe. The words simply told me to believe. I find that comforting. I heard another message when I was close to the soft light. There is something important that you must do. It seems I heard this over and over. I have no idea what the important thing is at the present, but I'm trying to believe that it will be shown to me. I feel transformed. Things don't just seem to be that important here on earth. I'm calmer. I'm trying not to figure it all out. I'm just taking it one day at a time. I miss that oh so comforting peace I felt on my journey, and frankly, I'm sad about being pulled back. However, I now believe that there is a place to which I will return one day, and that brings a smile to my face. If you would like to read either of these experiences, I will put a link in the About section of the video where you could read these experiences for yourself. And in addition, I will put a link to Nanci's book where you can read more on her experiences. As always, thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. Until next time, God bless.